So it's the start of a new year in WWE, which means one thing, of course, it's Royal Rumble season, which means everyone is discussing who is going to win the respective male and female Royal Rumble matches at this year's event. Now, there's been a lot of speculation as to who is going to win, and we're going to break down some of the names. I've had a quick look at the betting odds. I don't like to do this. That's why I'm doing this video relatively early. It's still, 3-4 weeks to go until the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble takes place this year on January 31st, so we've still got at least about 4 weeks or so until the Royal Rumble event. After this research, I'm not going to be looking at the betting odds when it comes to the Royal Rumble matches, because I know people don't put stock in them. I know people will say, oh, you can't believe the betting odds and stuff like that. But as you get closer to the event, they are not always accurate, but they do tell a story. They certainly do tell a story in terms of what people are thinking and what those backstage and high positions are thinking. Because I always use the story of, I was watching WrestleMania 32 with some friends of mine, right? And back then, we decided, you know what, we're gonna bet on wrestling, right? What marks we are, but we're gonna bet on wrestling. And we were betting on the Intercontinental Championship match, WrestleMania 32. Suddenly, about a couple of hours before the show went on the air, Zack Ryder just became this overwhelming favourite to win the Intercontinental Championship match. Now, that was madness. That was absolute madness at the time. Why would Zack Ryder win the Intercontinental Championship? He was a jobber. He was lucky to be in the match. I think the only reason he got in the match was an injury to Pac or Adrian Neville during that period of time. So there was no way that Zack Ryder was going to win the title. Look what happened. Zack Ryder, one of the most famous WrestleMania moments, arguably, in recent history, is when he won the Intercontinental Championship, and that happened. We found out that by the betting odds. So that was the case with that one. So I'm not going to look at the Royal Rumble betting odds that close anymore, but we're going to look into some of the potential names who could win the Royal Rumble event this year. And we're going to start off with the men's Royal Rumble first. And one of the favourites to win it this year is Daniel Bryan. Now, Daniel Bryan, of course, was one of the first names to announce himself to enter this year's Royal Rumble match. Now, whether or not Daniel Bryan will actually win it or not, this is a tough one for me. This is a tough one because obviously if he would win, should he win the match, he would probably challenge Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship, given that he's on SmackDown. The reason why lots of people are thinking Daniel Bryan could win this one is for several reasons. Daniel Bryan's never won a Royal Rumble in his WWE career. I don't even know if he's won a Battle Royal in his WWE career. Also, a big significant factor in all of that is that the Roman Reigns-Daniel Bryan feud has been rumoured for a long time on SmackDown. It was rumoured to happen at TLC in December. Didn't happen. It was rumoured to happen at the Royal Rumble itself in January. We now know that isn't going to happen because, of course, he's competing in the Royal Rumble match itself. So that has led to lots of people to say, you know, we've been speculated for a long time that Daniel Bryan could be facing Roman Reigns. He's never won a Royal Rumble. Obviously, famously, fans wanted him to win the Royal Rumble in both 2014 and 2015. In 2014, he wasn't even in it. Rey Mysterio turned heel by entering at number 30 that year. It was obviously won by Batista, but people wanted him to win the Royal Rumble that year. So much so that plans changed, and obviously he had the Miracle on Bourbon Street at WrestleMania 30. The following year, people wanted once again to see him win the Royal Rumble because he had to vacate the World Championship. He was out for like 9 months with an injury, never truly had the World Championship run that he deserved, so people wanted to see him win it that year. Obviously, he was in it, but he got eliminated early by Bray Wyatt. That Royal Rumble was eventually won by Roman Reigns. The fans turned on that show as well. So it's interesting that all these years later, Daniel Bryan is back in a Royal Rumble match. Hopefully, even if it's just virtual fans, they won't turn as bad as the crowds did in 2014 and 2015 with Daniel Bryan in that match. So maybe people are starting to say, maybe this is finally the Royal Rumble win that we've wanted to see for Daniel Bryan all of these years. Maybe that is going to be the case when it comes to Daniel Bryan this year. I don't know. I don't know if I can see it. I would love to see Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. Don't get me wrong. It'd be an awesome match. It'd be an awesome feud. Two of the very best in WWE. And that Roman Reigns character right now is just so on fire. It's it's the best thing on WWE TV, right up there with Bray Wyatt at the moment. It's just that good. So I have no doubt in my mind that Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan would be a hell of a lot of fun. People could question, is it WrestleMania worthy? But, you know, let's actually have some full-time guys in the main event of WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Let's actually have some serious... Let's not have any part-time guys. And then people will say, well, Daniel Bryan, but he still wrestles pretty much every week on TV and competes every week on TV. He's also on the creative team, so obviously he's got an influence there as well. So I can see why he's the favourite. I just don't know at this point in his career if I could see him winning it. The reason I say that is Daniel Bryan's been making a lot of noises about that recently, going, well, you know, I'm probably got a year or a couple of years left as a full-time wrestler. I want to be a full-time dad. He wants to be part of the creative process behind the scenes as well. I just don't know at this point given that his biggest and best interest is putting over younger talent at this point, whether it was Drew Gulak, now Chad Gable, Otis, Jey Uso, etc. I just don't know if he wants it, quite frankly. Obviously, you would if someone comes up to him and says, Vince McMahon says, Daniel Bryan, you're going to win the Royal Rumble, he just says, thank you, sir, and moves on to a WrestleMania payday and main event. But I don't know if at this point in his career, if that's necessarily something he would be massively, not keen on, but if it was something that he would necessarily really be on board with, considering there are probably more deserving and younger talents that WWE should be pushing in opposition to himself. So I could certainly see that. So Daniel Bryan is one of the picks. Speaking of those younger people that maybe WWE want to consider pushing, it's Big E. Now, to me, Big E, I think, is a more valid person to win the Royal Rumble than Daniel Bryan. I think Big E, the thing is with Big E at the moment, and that when the New Day was split up, when it comes to the WWE draft, you can never win. This is the point. You can never ever win when it comes to fans online, fans on social media. I mean, I'm not saying anything new there, but you can never truly win because fans sometimes claim and dream for something or speculate on something. Then once they're giving it, they don't like it. And I don't mean to sound like a typical WWE, oh, you don't know what you like till you're given it kind of thing, but sometimes that is the case. Sometimes that is the case. Big E is a great example of this. Big E, every time he competed in the New Day and he would have these great matches on SmackDown, Raw, wherever the New Day were drafted, people would always say online, the day Big E becomes a single star, he's going to be a main eventer, he's going to do so well, he's going to do fantastic. People would always say he's going to be a huge star, he's going to be a main eventer, he's going to do fantastic, but he needs to split up from the New Day first. Once WWE did that, people were angry that they were splitting up the New Day. I can't believe they split Big E from the New Day, from the New Day. I can't believe Big E's on SmackDown and Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods on Raw. How dare they? Why would they do that? Etc. etc. And to me at the time, I thought it was the right call. I still do think it's the right call because I agree with what everyone said. When Big E is a main eventer waiting to happen, they can't spend his whole career being part of the faction, being part of the tag team. And I truly believe, I still believe this now, the reason they split the New Day up like that was for one reason. It's because they can't trust themselves. If they kept Big E on SmackDown with the New Day, with Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, they would fall back into the trap and they would just have Big E as part of that faction, as part of that tag team. He needs to be doing more. That's why they split him up, and I think he's done well since then. Obviously, he's the Intercontinental Champion right now. I don't know how long he'll stay as Intercontinental Champion for. I would love to see a Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan situation whereby it's Intercontinental Champion versus Universal Champion at WrestleMania, Big E versus Roman Reigns. People can question, oh, is that a WrestleMania main event though? Is that worthy of a WrestleMania main event? The way that WWE, I think, is going to improve several aspects of their show, whether it's creative, ratings, etc., staleness, is creating new stars. Big E is a new star waiting to happen. How do you make him a new star? You give him the opportunity to succeed. It was the same with Drew McIntyre last year. Drew McIntyre won the Royal Rumble. He won the championship at WrestleMania. They've got themselves a main event star because of it. Big E is exactly the same in that situation. So I think Big E is a very viable option to win the Royal Rumble. I would love to see a Roman Reigns versus Big E main event at WrestleMania between two full-time WWE superstars, 2 championships on the line. They could do something really, really special there. Whether or not they do it, that will remain to be seen. But I would really, really like to see a big career-making moment with Big E win the Royal Rumble, same as they did with Drew McIntyre last year. And then we could do something really, really special, having that main event with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. So I would really like to see that. I really would. But if it's not Big E, a lot of people are thinking it could be, I mean, we've got to talk about it. Goldberg. We've got to talk about it. Goldberg. Now, let's start it off. I don't want to see Goldberg win the Royal Rumble. And I'm not alone in that. I don't think many people do, apart from Vince McMahon. And what is surprising, actually, is when Goldberg called out Roman Reigns last month, because that's what's got people talking, isn't it? Is that Goldberg, he was on the bump last month, which is WWE's social media show, and he called out Roman Reigns. He called out Roman Reigns and said, well, we're meant to have the match at WrestleMania 36. He uses my move, the spear, and I'm not done with him. We're going to have our match at some point. And people went, oh, my God. Because Goldberg, he does have that contract with WWE. He has a contract with WWE. I don't know if this is his last year with it or next year is his last year with it. Nevertheless, he's got that contract with WWE in that he's contractually obligated for 2 matches per year. And last year he had his 2 matches. He had it at Super Showdown against The Fiend, and then he had it at WrestleMania. It was meant to be against Roman Reigns. Instead, it was Braun Strowman. He lost. And obviously, people know WWE's going to cash in on that contract. They want to get their money's worth. Even during a pandemic, they want to get their money's worth. They want to have Goldberg competing a high-profile match, probably at WrestleMania. So once we heard that Goldberg was saying, I want to face Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns, we've still got unfinished business, that was planting seeds, and people went, we're going to see Roman Reigns Goldberg at some point. Now, is that going to be at WrestleMania? I don't know. I hope not. I really hope not, because for a variety of reasons. One, the Royal Rumble match should be, it's a perfect opportunity to make a star for WWE. And they don't have many opportunities throughout the year for a variety of reasons. They probably do. But in terms of instantly making a star like that, making a main eventer, they don't have many opportunities like that throughout the year. The Royal Rumble is an opportunity to make stars and really elevate someone from here to here when it comes to WWE TV and getting into main events. It doesn't need to be won by a WWE Hall of Famer. It doesn't need to be won by a Goldberg. Goldberg is an attraction on his own. Now, whether or not I truly feel that he's as much of an attraction as he was back in the 90s, even if he was a couple of years ago, I don't even know if he's the attraction he was a couple of years ago at this point. Nevertheless, he is still an attraction. I get it. People tune in to watch Goldberg. People get excited for whatever reason to see Goldberg on pay-per-view. I think ultimately they're disappointed. I think they're disappointed because they get hyped up for this match and then they tune in and it only lasts 3 minutes. And like, well, imagine you paid for that. You know, well, we do for the network, you know, $9.99. It's still $9.99. Why did I pay for that? I certainly don't feel that I pay my $9.99 to watch Goldberg matches, put it that way. So he shouldn't win for that reason, because it should be about making a new star in the Royal Rumble. And again, I don't think he should win because I don't want to see that match at WrestleMania. I'm not devastated. I'm not gutted that we didn't see that match at WrestleMania this year. I wasn't like, of all the things that got taken away this year, you know, there's so many things that got taken away. The Undertaker's last match happening in front of a crowd, Edge having his first singles match in terms of WrestleMania and that in front of a crowd, all that stuff that got taken away and we didn't get this year, last year rather. Goldberg not having his WrestleMania match against Roman Reigns didn't bother me in the slightest. I'm glad we didn't see it because I don't care to see it. There's not this big demand to see it. They try and fabricate that there is, WWE, and Goldberg tries to claim that there's this big demand or people really want to see me face Roman Reigns. They don't. They don't. I don't even know. And I always try to be rational in these situations. I always try to think, well, what would a younger me think, right? Because we've all been at that as pro wrestling fans. When you're younger and you believe it's real, you still, you know, you don't know, you're not smart to the business, as they would say. And you watch it and you think about people that could beat so-and-so. I don't even know if to a kid, if to a 6, 7, 8-year-old that still doesn't even know that wrestling isn't legitimate, I don't even know if they would think legitimately that Goldberg could beat Roman Reigns. I don't think they would. I don't see the attraction. And there certainly, to me, isn't a demand whatsoever for Goldberg to win the Royal Rumble match. The issue that would concern me is that if we were in front of a capacity stadium at this point, sold out arena with 50, 60, 70,000 fans at a ballpark, which they've had, that's these baseball stadiums, which they've been hosting the Royal Rumble at in recent years, they wouldn't have Goldberg win the Royal Rumble match. They just wouldn't, because the fan reaction would be so negative and so devastating. He'd get booed out of the arena and the show would go off the air with people just absolutely livid. That might not, and probably isn't the case for the Royal Rumble this year at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida, because we know most likely at this point we're not going to have legitimate fans there, we're just going to have the virtual fans there. We're not going to have physical fans in the building. So they could get a positive reaction for Goldberg winning the Royal Rumble for TV purposes. They wouldn't have fans booing him out the building. That is a concern to me. That is a concern to me, because to me that says, you know what, Goldberg could win it because we're not going to have that negative reaction. And they want to, for whatever reason, get that Roman Reigns Goldberg match at WrestleMania. So unfortunately we can't rule it out. I would be so annoyed and so devastated to see Goldberg win it, but at this point we just can't rule it out. We just can't rule it out. Another name to talk about is Keith Lee. Now, Keith Lee is, of course, tonight, at the time of recording this, is the night of Raw Legends night on USA Network. He is competing for the WWE Championship. I don't expect him to win tonight against Drew McIntyre. I just don't. I think Drew McIntyre is going to be up the WWE Champion up until WrestleMania at the very least. And to be honest, I expect him to be the WWE Champion coming out of WrestleMania. But there had been rumours, of course, that Keith Lee was scheduled for a WWE Championship match at WrestleMania with Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. So, in the same way that, as I mentioned, Drew McIntyre winning the title, winning the Royal Rumble last year was a star-making moment and progressed him to winning that WWE Championship, it could be the same for Keith Lee. We know Vince McMahon. I mean, at this point, do we know if Vince McMahon's a fan of Keith Lee? I don't know if we do. I really don't know if we do, if we know that Keith Lee is in the good graces of Vince McMahon. I think Vince McMahon likes him to a point, but this is the same man also that's been sent to the Performance Center to hone upon his skills. He's one of the best workers on the roster, certainly one of the best big men workers on the roster, so I don't know necessarily about that one. But there were those rumours, reports that the card internally was scheduled to be Drew McIntyre versus Keith Lee versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. So it's a possibility that Keith Lee wins the Royal Rumble. He had that great moment with Brock Lesnar last year. So could it happen? I mean, it could. It absolutely could. I just don't know at this point. I think there's probably people that are more likely to win than Keith Lee, but at this point, anything could happen. Another name to consider is, of course, Edge, because we know that Edge is returning very, very soon. Obviously, he had the torn triceps back in June at Backlash in the greatest wrestling match ever. Didn't even win Match of the Year, by the way. So it's the greatest wrestling match ever, but not Match of the Year. You try and figure that one out. But when it comes to Edge, we know that Edge is returning. He's going to be returning very, very soon. He's definitely going to be healthy by the time of WrestleMania come April, and it's likely he's going to be picking up on the feud with Randy Orton. They're going to have the final match in their trilogy. That's going to be at WrestleMania. So he could obviously return at the Royal Rumble. He returned to active in-ring competition at last year's Royal Rumble event, so it goes without saying he can absolutely do it this year as well. I don't know if he would win for a variety of reasons, though. Obviously, the big one being if he wins, who does he face? Because he's going to be facing Randy Orton at WrestleMania. Unless plans drastically change and Edge faces a Roman Reigns, which is possible, and he has the Randy Orton match prior to that, I don't see what winning the Royal Rumble does for him. And also, as well, you don't want to take away from last year's moment. Last year's moment with Edge returning at the Royal Rumble, there was still a crowd in attendance, life wasn't crazy yet. It was still an amazing and incredible moment. A year later, do you want to rehash that and do it over again? It would make last year's moment feel less special to me. So I just don't know at this point if we would have Edge even in the Royal Rumble match, and certainly I don't think he would win it. In the same reason mentioned about Daniel Bryan and Goldberg, is that it should be a moment for elevating younger talent. Last year, if Edge had come back and would won it then, I would get it. But even then, I would have said, well, who does he face? He's not going to be the champion. So I think at this point, I don't think Edge will win it. And I don't even know if he'll enter it, to be honest, at this point. And finally, the last name to consider when it comes to a winner of the Men's Royal Rumble match is none other than Brock Lesnar. Now, as far as we're aware, we don't really know the status of Brock Lesnar in WWE at this point. The last thing any of us ever heard or was reported about was that Brock Lesnar's WWE contract had expired. It expired over August and September, around that period of time. It's highly expected that Brock Lesnar will re-sign with WWE. It's just the case at the moment they're in a bit of a standoff in terms of contract negotiations. They know Brock Lesnar probably isn't going to go anywhere, and Brock Lesnar knows that eventually when things start to go back to normal and WWE wants to have a big name for a stadium show, wants to have a big name for a pay-per-view, he'll get a phone call from Vince McMahon. They'll offer him very good money. Brock will get what he wants eventually because he always does. He always has these short contracts, and every time they come up, it's always like Brock's going to leave, and all this sort of weird dancing happens between him and Vince McMahon, but eventually he always re-signs and he always gets the money that he wants. So he's going to return to WWE eventually. As I mentioned, it's already been spoken about that he'll face Drew McIntyre in a rematch from last year's WrestleMania at this year's WrestleMania. So there is a chance. I think there's more of a chance of Brock Lesnar winning the Royal Rumble than, say, an Edge, possibly even a Keith Lee as well. And the reason I say that is because I wouldn't be stunned if WWE wanted to do the reverse of what happened last year. Now, of course, last year at the Royal Rumble, Brock Lesnar was the WWE champion, and they did a deal where the WWE champion entered it and tried to win it from number one. And actually, I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was one of the better matches of the year and one of the better Brock Lesnar performances in a long time too. But it was a star-making moment because, of course, Drew McIntyre eliminated Brock Lesnar, and then he won the Royal Rumble to eventually become WWE champion by beating Lesnar at WrestleMania. So I could see them essentially doing the reverse of that. Now, I don't think Drew McIntyre is going to enter the Royal Rumble and try and do a Brock Lesnar or anything like that. But I could see a situation whereby Brock Lesnar enters it and that's how he makes his grand return to WWE. It would certainly get people talking. I mentioned before about I think it should be a star-making moment, and the same way that I don't necessarily think Brock Lesnar should win the Royal Rumble. I don't think so. He has won a Royal Rumble before, so he doesn't need to add that to his CV. But this is a guy that we've seen actually appear at the last minute several times. I think back to Money in the Bank, way back when he won the Money in the Bank and then later cashed in the championship in 2019. So that absolutely is a possibility as well. So I wouldn't rule out a Brock Lesnar appearance. Whether he wins it or not, I don't know if that's going to happen. But Brock Lesnar is certainly a possibility to win the Royal Rumble match later on in this month. Let's move on to the female side of things, because Bianca Belair, as of right now, as the time of doing the research anyway, was the favourite to win the Women's Royal Rumble match later on this month. To me, this is the perfect person to win it. For me, I think that Bianca Belair, I said it back to her time in NXT, to me, Bianca Belair is going to be that person that has way more success on the main roster than she does on the NXT roster. Of course, she never won the NXT Women's Championship, competed for it several times, but never won it. But I felt during that time in NXT that she really was going to have her best success on the main roster, and I still do think that's the case. And we've seen in recent weeks Bianca Belair really thriving on SmackDown, especially since she's been tagging with Sasha Banks. Given that she's been tagging with Sasha Banks, I think they could be potentially laying the foundation, sowing the seeds for Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks at WrestleMania. I would love to see it. I think that would be a match well worthy of WrestleMania. Whether or not, I don't think it would be the main event. I don't think WWE will do that women's main event for a while, unfortunately, until we can have maybe a Becky Lynch versus a Ronda Rousey main event, doing the original main event people wanted to see at WrestleMania 35. But Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks could be something very special. And as I mentioned before, several times during this video, it's the star-making moment, right? It's the star-making moment. How do you create a new star? You have them win the biggest match of the year, one of the biggest matches of the year as you head into WrestleMania season. Bianca Belair last year actually was in the Women's Royal Rumble match and had one of the standout performances. She had the most eliminations, I think, in that match. At the time, she was still with NXT, but she was absolutely on fire during that match. So I would do the exact same thing as they did last year. I'd have Bianca Belair enter early, do maybe record elimination, something like that. But on top of having record eliminations, then you finally have her win, and then you have her facing Sasha Banks at WrestleMania. To me, that makes the most sense. That's the name I would like to see win it the most. But of course, there are other names being considered to win it, according to the bookies. One is Rhea Ripley. Now, Rhea Ripley on the main roster, given that what happened during last year, that it was Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania for the NXT Championship. Given that Rhea Ripley was appearing on several episodes of Monday Night Raw prior to the pandemic and prior to moving to the Performance Center, the empty arena shows, etc., given the fact that we're now in 2021, we're now in Royal Rumble season again, and Rhea Ripley is still part of the NXT roster, very surprising. I think if you'd have said that to me or anyone coming, or just before WrestleMania last year or coming out of WrestleMania, you'd say, oh no, Rhea Ripley, she'll be on Raw right after WrestleMania. It's a given. So it's very surprising she's still with NXT, but now we're at that time of the year, the potential and the stock hasn't dropped for me in Rhea Ripley. Did she have more momentum last year? Absolutely. Because of the way she won the NXT Women's Championship, the way she was being booked, the way she came over from NXT UK into NXT, and the opportunity and run she had at Survivor Series in 2019 too. She absolutely had more momentum, but her potential and her stock to me hasn't dropped that much. I do think she's still very young, and obviously that window is still a big window to do something with Rhea Ripley, but I do think it's not now or never, but certainly there's definitely, I think, a time that they need to pull the trigger on Rhea Ripley, put it that way. And maybe that time is the Royal Rumble. Maybe it's the case of, as I mentioned, a star-making moment for Bianca Belair. I think Raw still need female talent, even though Charlotte Flair has returned and now Asuka and all that is happening on Monday Night Raw. I still do think they need top-tier female talent on Raw, and I would really like to see a Rhea Ripley maybe come and win it and then move over to Monday Night Raw. I think Rhea Ripley versus Asuka, Rhea Ripley once again facing off against Charlotte Flair. I think that's really interesting. I think it's a really interesting possibility. So I wouldn't rule out Rhea Ripley, because at this point, as I mentioned, it just feels like it's inevitable. She has to move to the main roster in 2021, right? Because it felt inevitable that was going to happen in 2020, and it was shocking, quite frankly, that it didn't happen. So given that we're in 2021 now, I think it's almost inevitable. She's going to move to the main roster. So Rhea Ripley is definitely a possibility. Another name people will talk about is Ronda Rousey, because when is Ronda Rousey going to return? When is Ronda Rousey going to return? Now, to be honest, if we hadn't had the pandemic, if only, but if we hadn't had the pandemic, I think Ronda Rousey would have returned to WWE by now, or at least in a cameo form at the very, very least. There reportedly were plans for her to make an appearance at WrestleMania 36 prior to the pandemic. Once that happened, everything got thrown off the table, obviously for a variety of reasons, travel, finances, etc. We don't know how comfortable Ronda Rousey would be performing during the pandemic too, but she is still under contract to WWE, at least until April, because she signed, was it a 3-year deal in January of 2018, and that was until April of 2021. So if WWE allows that contract to expire, and we don't know the situational status when it comes to Ronda Rousey's contract, she may have signed a new deal, but the terms of that deal may be completely different to the original terms of that contract. Because remember, when she signed with WWE all the way back in 2018, the terms of that deal were that it was going to be a full-time gig. She was going to be on Raw every single week, and for a year or so she was. And then she lost at WrestleMania to Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch became the double champion, and we haven't seen Ronda Rousey since. As I mentioned, I think most people thought she was going to take a year off. She was going to return at WrestleMania 36. Then the wheels could be in motion for Ronda Rousey to be competing again. And then we were going to move on to Ronda Rousey being back as an active WWE superstar. Of course, the pandemic happened. Nothing has happened since with that. I think WWE, let's assume she hasn't signed a new deal and her contract does expire in April of 2021. WWE would be, mad to not have Ronda Rousey compete during that period of time. If you've got the person under contract, I understand there's difficulty and ultimately Ronda Rousey has to want to do it as well. But surely there would be a phone call of, right, when are you ready to come back? You know, we've got Charlotte Flair back. Maybe you could do something with Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. There are certainly options. Maybe you can have a rematch against Sasha Banks. You had that at the Royal Rumble back in 2019. There are possibilities for her to face Asuka. That would be a lot of fun too. So there certainly are options for her to face. There are no doubt options for her to face. So Ronda Rousey coming back and maybe doing, instead of, she said she doesn't want to be a full-time WWE superstar anymore. The travel was too much for her. That travel doesn't exist, frankly, anymore. So that's out the window. You don't have to worry about that. So if she wanted to come back and just do TVs, WWE would let her do it. And if she's only got 3 months left on her contract, there is no doubt in my mind WWE would want to cash in on that. Now, whether it's not winning the Royal Rumble, we'll have to wait and see. But if Ronda Rousey enters the Royal Rumble, she has to win, right? That's her character. She's booked as this dominant, badass female that she barely loses any matches. She lost to Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. Controversially, her shoulder came up. So if Ronda Rousey comes back and she does enter that Royal Rumble match, she wins. She'll win. So you can't rule that one out, considering, I think, how close it is to her contract expiring and just all of the circumstances for how long she's been out of the ring for. So Ronda Rousey is a possibility. If she would win, who does she face? I don't think she faces Sasha Banks on SmackDown. I think she would go for the Raw title, but then who's going to be the Raw champion at WrestleMania? It could potentially be this next name, that being Charlotte Flair. Now, I think, given that Charlotte Flair won the Royal Rumble last year, people would say, well, that rules her out. She's not going to win this year. This is Charlotte Flair we're talking about, okay? Charlotte Flair, regardless of what you think of her, and I know she doesn't have a ton of fans on social media. If anything, it's quite divided, actually. That's probably not fair. It is quite divided when it comes to Charlotte Flair, because you can say what you want about her being overpushed, being overly featured in singles, in title matches, and having too many title matches, holding too many titles. I think that's justified. I do think that's justified. I think last year was a great example of that at WrestleMania. The plan was always for Shayna Baszler to win the Royal Rumble. That always was the plan. And on the day of, that was changed, and Charlotte Flair won the Royal Rumble. Did that hurt Shayna Baszler's opportunity to win the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania? I think it did. And Shayna Baszler, she's getting there now, but she definitely doesn't have the momentum that she had in NXT, and it's very obvious Vince McMahon isn't and wasn't sold on Shayna Baszler. So, Charlotte Flair won the Royal Rumble, and I think part of that goes into not being sold on Shayna Baszler, but I think also part of that goes into, we need Charlotte Flair to do something at WrestleMania. We can't have Charlotte Flair not doing anything at WrestleMania. She's Charlotte Flair. And therefore, it meant that Charlotte Flair won the Royal Rumble, and she faced Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship, and she won. And I don't think many people thought she was going to win going into that either, because it's the NXT Women's Championship. Is she going to go to NXT? And she won the Women's Championship, and frankly, it did nothing. It did absolutely nothing for NXT, and it did nothing for the NXT Women's Championship, and it did nothing for Rhea Ripley. Is that Charlotte Flair's fault? No, it's not. The pandemic was hitting around that period of time, but they could have and should have handled it better. Now, people would say, as I mentioned, she won it last year, why would she win it this year? Because she's Charlotte Flair, and it's WrestleMania season, and they might want something for her to do. She's tagging with Asuka right now, and they're both the Women's Tag Team Champions. Can you actively say they wouldn't have Charlotte Flair win the Royal Rumble for a second year in a row, so they can say Charlotte Flair is the only person to win the Royal Rumble 2 years in a row from the female side of things? So that's one reason for her to win it. But then also, if she wins the Royal Rumble, that would line up a match against Asuka, her tag team partner, at WrestleMania for the Raw Women's Championship. Can you tell me they wouldn't do that? Because I'm telling you, they absolutely would. So Charlotte Flair, nobody can rule out Charlotte Flair. They just can't. Even if it's 2 years in a row, they cannot rule that out. So I wouldn't rule out a Charlotte Flair victory at all. Now, another name to consider, of course, is Bayley. Now, Bayley's an interesting one, because I think if Bayley wins, why wouldn't she win? I think the booking of Bayley coming out of her SmackDown Women's Championship reign has been terrible. She's done nothing but lose. And this is someone that barely lost for, 500 days on SmackDown. She had that SmackDown Women's Championship reign that was 380 days or something like that, but she also had a championship reign that was 150, something like that. days before that. So she was combined SmackDown Women's Champion for certainly the longest in WWE history, and she's the longest reigning single SmackDown Women's Championship reign in history too. So there is so much credibility and history there, but coming out of that loss to Sasha Banks, she's done nothing really but lose since then, and it kind of feels like, I don't want to say she's lost in the shuffle because I don't think she is, but it certainly feels to me like they're not sure what to do with Bayley on SmackDown at the moment, and I think what they should do, move her to Raw. Move it to Raw. And people will say, well, the brand rules, blah, blah, blah. WWE doesn't care about the brand rules. Are you kidding me? WWE's never cared about the brand rules. If they want to switch Bayley to Raw, they'll do it tomorrow. They'll find out a way. They'll come up with some BS rule. Well, you know, technically, her SmackDown contract expired. How many times do we hear that, right? Or she had a clause in her contract that allowed her to go to Raw. If they want her to go to Raw, they'll find a way. And a way for her to go to Raw could be potentially her winning the Royal Rumble match. If she won the Royal Rumble match, and she said, you know what, I was a SmackDown Women's Champion for nearly 400 days, a record. I want to do the same thing on Monday Night Raw. Wins the Royal Rumble and challenges Asuka for a match at WrestleMania, or possibly Charlotte Flair for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania. I'd be all down for that. I think that would be, I'd have no problem with that because Bayley's a star. Bayley's a big name. And she deserves more than not really doing that much on SmackDown. I know that she was champion for a long period of time and you've got to kind of wait your turn. But I think if you've got the momentum that Bayley has, to me it makes the most sense to continue with that. But get her off of SmackDown. Go to Raw, have her on Raw, have her continue the character development on Raw, and have her in the Raw Women's Championship picture. I think that makes the most sense to me. So can't rule out Bayley either. And finally, Alexa Bliss. Now, Alexa Bliss is a fascinating one. Do I expect her to win the Royal Rumble? Probably not. Probably not, because there are other names that I mentioned, when it like Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, even Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey, I think maybe are more likely. The reason I think Alexa Bliss does have to be considered, though, is because of what she's doing on Raw right now. I mentioned that Roman Reigns is the best thing on SmackDown, but in addition to that, on Monday Night Raw, the best thing on Monday Night Raw is Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, and Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss, I think, has been a shot in the arm for The Fiend character. The Fiend character and the Bray Wyatt Firefly Funhouse character, to me, and this might be controversial, was getting slightly repetitive. I do think it was getting slightly repetitive in the sense that it just felt like every week, Firefly Funhouse segment that you're not really sure what it means. There was no development. There was no storyline development. It was just singular. It was just there. And the Fiend would appear in the darkness, Mandible Claw, that was it. And it kind of was samey, and it felt like, okay, where's the progression? Where's the evolution in this? Turns out the progression and evolution was getting in Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss being involved with The Fiend has given it a massive shot in the arm. Their dynamic, their relationship, the way they interact. Alexa Bliss's Firefly Funhouse version of herself and the Fiendess version of herself has been spectacular. And I think her work potentially could be rewarded. And we could maybe see a possibility, I don't know, coming out of WrestleMania. It would be cool to see Alexa Bliss and The Fiend holding both the Raw Women's Championship and the WWE Championship. I don't think that will happen, because I don't think The Fiend is going to be involved with the WWE Championship come WrestleMania. But I don't think you can rule out Alexa Bliss. I don't think you can. I do think there are more names that are more likely to win, and Alexa Bliss is probably lower down on that list. But as I mentioned, because of the work she's done this year, I don't think you can rule it out. She certainly could be a surprise entrance, and if she's in it, then she's certainly one of the a possibility to win it. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on some of the names I said could win the 2021 Royal Rumble matches there? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved with the community below. Drop a comment. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.